Have you ever looked at your family and just wondered, how? How did you get your dad's eyes or your mom's laugh? Well, today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to dive deep and unravel the science of how all these traits, and sometimes more serious medical conditions, are literally written into our family trees.
I mean, it's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? Why do I have my grandfather's nose? Or why does this one health issue seem to pop up in every generation? The answers are all there, hiding in our genetic code. And today, we're going to learn exactly how to read the clues. You know, the father of genetics, Gregor Mendel, he kind of had it easy. He could crossbreed thousands of pea plants to see what would happen. It was all neat and controlled. But with humans, Fifth, no way. We can't do that, obviously. Our family histories are messy, they're complicated, and we definitely can't run controlled experiments on our relatives. So if we can't run the experiments, what do? We have to work backwards. Geneticists have to be detectives. They need a special tool that lets them analyze the story that's already been written, a way to find the clues hiding in our family trees. And, every good detective needs a map. In the world of genetics, that map is called a pedigree chart. Think of it like a special kind of family tree, one that's designed to track a very specific trait through all the different generations. The official term for all this detective work is pedigree analysis, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. By laying out a family's history in this standardized way, we can suddenly start to see these hidden patterns just leap off the page. Okay, but before we can read these maps, we have to learn their secret language. It's actually a really simple code made up of just a handful of basic symbols. But once you know them, any pedigree chart in the world starts to tell you its story. All right, let's crack the code. It starts with the absolute basics. A square is a male. A circle is a female. Simple as that. Now, what about the trait we're actually tracking? Well, if an individual has that trait, whether it's blue eyes or a genetic condition, we just shade in their shape. So, a shaded square or a shaded circle means that person is affected. To show a relationship, like a mating pair, you just draw a horizontal line connecting a square and a circle. And from that line, a vertical line drops down to connect to their children, the next generation. Brothers and sisters are then connected by their own horizontal line. And that's it. Those are pretty much the core building blocks of this entire language. So here it is, all in one place, your official pedigree decoder key. Squares for males, circles for females. Shaded means they have the trait, and a few simple lines show you who's related to who. With just these symbols, we are officially ready to map out pretty much any family's genetic history. Okay, so now that we can read the map, it's time for the real detective work, spotting the clues. The way those shaded shapes are arranged on the map can tell us exactly how a trait is inherited. So let's look at the three big patterns you're going to see. So one of the most common patterns is called autosomal dominant. The biggest, most obvious clue here? The trait shows up in every single generation. It doesn't skip. If a kid has it, you can bet at least one of their parents has it too. It just keeps on going, affecting both men and women. Myotonic dystrophy is a perfect example of this. But what if the trait just disappears for a generation and then pops back up again? Well, that's our telltale clue for an autosomal recessive pattern. You can have two totally unaffected parents, who we call carriers, suddenly have a child who does have the trait. That skipping a generation is the dead giveaway. A classic example is sickle cell anemia. All right, our last major pattern is X-linked recessive. And for this one, the clues are all about gender. You're going to see this trait appear way more often in males. Why? Because guys only have one X chromosome. It usually gets passed from a carrier mother to her son. But here's the real smoking gun. An affected father can never pass an X-linked recessive trait to his son. It's genetically impossible. Hemophilia is the textbook case for this one. All right, you've learned the symbols, you know the clues to look for. I think it's time we put your new detective skills to the test. Let's solve a quick genetic mystery. Okay, here's the case file. Look closely at this family. The trait only appears in males. We see it in the first generation and then again in the third, but it totally skips the second generation. And here's the key detail. The affected sons have mothers who are completely unaffected. So, what's going on here, detective? What's your call? Let's break down those clues together. First things first, does it skip a generation? Yes, it does. Right away, that tells us it's probably not a dominant trait. Second, is there a gender bias? Oh yeah, a huge one. Only males are affected.
That's a massive red flag for something X-linked. And finally, look at how it's being passed down, from carrier mothers to their sons. This is fitting one of our patterns perfectly.
And the verdict is in, based on all the evidence, the skipping generations, the male-only pattern, the mother-to-son transmission. This is a classic textbook case of X-linked recessive inheritance. See, once you know what clues to look for, the pedigree tells you the whole story. Case closed. So cracking these little puzzles is pretty fun, right? But what's the big picture here? Why is this tool so incredibly important in the real world of genetics, and especially in medicine? This quote from our source material really just nails it. Pedigree analysis is a fundamental, powerful tool. It's what allows doctors and genetic counselors to trace diseases through a family, to predict risks for future generations, and to help families understand their own unique genetic story.
So, if you're going to take anything away from this explainer, let it be these 3 things. First, pedigrees are the essential family maps we use when we can't do experiments. Second, a few incredibly simple symbols can reveal some really complex genetic stories. And third, the real detective work, the key to it all, is spotting those patterns, like a trait that skips a generation or one that mostly affects one gender. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Every single one of our families has a unique genetic story woven through it. Now that you know the basics, you could start to uncover the patterns written in your own history. So, what mysteries are waiting to be solved in your family tree? Thanks for diving into this with me.